People in the villages still whisper about St. Alora's. They say if you walk too close at night, you'll hear crying in the trees, sometimes laughter, sometimes your own name. It was built by colonials in the early 1900s, in the middle of nowhere, deep in the Mbanza forest. Officially, it was a psychiatric hospital. Unofficially, it was a dumping ground, a place to disappear the unwanted, the unstable, the inconvenient. The government shut it down decades ago, but they never tore it down. That's the part that bothers me. Places like that, you burn them, bury them, salt the earth. You don't leave them standing like a monument to all the pain that happened inside. And yet, St. Alora's still stands. I wish I could say I'd gone there out of curiosity or for research, or even for the thrill of chasing ghosts. But the truth is simpler, uglier. I needed the money. Chapter 1. The Explorers. The van was too hot, too cramped, and smelled faintly of old fries and camera batteries. 6 of us sat crammed together, bumping knees every time the dirt road dipped. Darren was up front, grinning like a man who thought he'd just sold his soul but gotten the better end of the deal. Darren King, the star, YouTube's favorite ghost chaser. Urban Shadows, 500,000 subscribers. He lived for clicks for the next viral scare. "All right, team," he said, holding up his GoPro like it was the Holy Grail. "St. Alora's, this is it. No one streamed from inside before. Tonight we're making history." Across from me, Lena Torres shifted uncomfortably, arms crossed. She wasn't here for clicks. She was an anthropologist, mid-30s, with the kind of intense stare that could pin you in place. She'd been collecting local folklore for her research and reluctantly agreed to guide Darren through the cultural context. In her words, so he doesn't stomp all over sacred ground like an idiot. Next to her was Malik Johnson, ex-military, tall, broad, the kind of guy who scanned every tree line like he expected enemy fire. Darren hired him as security. Then there was Jonah Reed, Darren's childhood buddy, full-time skeptic, part-time jackass. "If a ghost shows up, I'm punching it in the face," he'd said back in the hotel. I believed him. Maya Patel, photographer, barely spoke, always behind her lens. And then Aaron Walsh, the camera operator, and the one person who looked like she wanted to bolt out the door every time someone mentioned haunted. And then me, Ethan Cole, 27, former journalist, burned out freelancer. My last big story tanked and I needed cash. Darren had offered me a cut if I came along to help with notes, background, and bonus narration. Honestly, I wasn't sure why I'd said yes. Maybe because a part of me, deep, small, unspoken, felt like St. Alora's was waiting for me. "Etia, 10 minutes, Malik said from the driver's seat. The van lurched over a rut. Lena's notebook slid off her lap, scattering papers. Darren snatched one up before she could. "What's this?" He grinned, flipping through. "Folklore transcripts," Lena said, snatching it back. "The villagers told me what they know about St. Alora's. Perfect. Give us a teaser. Like, urban legend appetizer." She hesitated. "Then, they say the asylum is cursed. The doctors did things, tried to erase memories, electroshock, drugs, confinement, and darkness. But the worst was Ward C. Nobody explained what happened there, just that once you went in, you didn't come back out." The van grew quiet. Jonah broke it with a snort. "Every horror movie has a forbidden room. Bet it's just storage. Tell that to the hunters who, still hear screaming at night," Lena shot back. I glanced at her notebook in her lap. For a second, I could have sworn I saw my own name scrawled in the margins. Ethan Cole, admission date. I blinked. It was gone. Just messy notes. "Home sweet home," Darren said. I looked out the window, and there it was. The asylum rose out of the trees like a corpse clawing its way from the earth. 4 stories of rotting concrete, windows shattered like broken teeth. Vines crawled up the walls. The rusted gates sagged, barely holding onto their hinges. Above them, a sign, letters flaking but still legible. St. Alora's Institute for the Insane. The sun was setting behind it, bleeding red light through the broken windows. For a moment, It looked like the building was on fire from the inside. My stomach turned. I'd been in plenty of ruins before, old factories, ghost towns, abandoned schools. But this one felt like it was looking back at us. We spilled out of the van. Crickets droned. The air felt thick, wet, and heavy, like stepping into a lung. Maya raised her camera, snapping shots of the facade. Erin just stared, pale. "It feels wrong," she whispered. "Places like this always feel wrong," Jonah said. "It's all in your head. Empty buildings, uncanny vibes. It's just survival instinct." "Sure," Malik muttered. "Survival instinct. Tell that to the kids who came in on a dare and never walked out." Nobody laughed. Darren clapped his hands, breaking the tension. "Okay, formation time." Malik on point. Jonah, comic relief. Erin, roll everything. Maya, B-roll of the entryway. Lena, creepy folklore as needed. Ethan, you're narrating. Keep it dramatic. Got it? Let's make history, people. We pushed the gates open. They groaned like something dying. Inside the courtyard, weeds grew waist-high through cracked stone. A fountain sat bone-dry, choked with vines and tiny bones. Malik cut the chains on the main doors. Russ shrieked. The air that poured out was stale and wet, thick with mold and something sharper, like iron, like dried blood. Darren raised his flashlight, grinning. "Welcome to St. Alora's." His beam cut across overturned gurneys, graffiti, peeling walls. A single wheelchair sat abandoned in the middle of the lobby. Its wheels creaked faintly, though no breeze stirred. I felt my throat tighten, and then, as we stepped inside, the strangest thought slid unbidden into my mind. "Welcome back, Ethan." Chapter 2. The first signs. The first step inside was the hardest. The air was different in there, like stepping underwater. Every breath tasted of mold and rust. The beam of Darren's flashlight swept across the lobby, and for a moment, I wondered if we'd stepped into a mausoleum. Paint peeled in long, curling strips, hanging like old skin. Filing cabinets lay toppled, drawers torn open, patient charts strewn across the floor. Erin's camera caught the mess, her lens trembling slightly in her hands. Every sound, our boots crunching on paper, the groan of the wheelchair behind us, echoed like a shout. Jonah snorted. "Nice place. Bet the Yelp reviews are glowing." "Quiet," Lena hissed, crouching beside the papers. She brushed dirt off one, squinting. "Admissions log. Last entry's 1964. But St. Alora's wasn't shut until 68. "Lost the paperwork," Jonah shrugged. "Or lost the patience," Malik muttered. I tried to laugh, but my throat was dry. Darren swung his camera toward the walls. Murals stretched across them, childlike drawings in faded paint. Stick figures with crooked smiles, suns with too many rays. At first glance, they were almost innocent. But the cracks in the wall had warped the faces, pulling their grins into screams. "Creepy art therapy," Darren said cheerfully. "Gotta love it," Lena's voice dropped. "Those weren't kids, patients, forced to express themselves." Her words echoed in my head longer than they should have. Patients, expressing. I didn't know why it hit me, but I felt like I'd seen these exact drawings before. Not here, not online, just somewhere deep in my memory. I shook it off. We pressed on, flashlights cutting narrow tunnels through the dark. The first corridor was lined with rooms, doors hanging loose on their hinges. Inside, rusted bed frames sat against walls, restraints dangling from the headboards. A faint draft whispered down the hall, carrying the smell of rot. "Feels staged," Jonas said, nudging an old pan with his boot. "Like a haunted house attraction." "No," Lena whispered. "This is how they left it." I kept close to Erin. Her camera was steady, but her eyes weren't. She kept glancing over her shoulder like she expected something to be there. And then, she froze. Did someone just say my name?" We all turned. My skin prickled. I hadn't heard it, but Erin's voice was trembling. "Nope," Jonah said. "Unless the rats have learned English." I didn't hear anything. Malik added. Darren grinned, smelling content. "Erin, that could be our first EVP. Spirit calling you by name. That's huge." Her face said she didn't care about views, and truth be told, I believed her. At the end of the hall, we pushed into Ward A. The smell hit me first, thicker, heavier like mildew and rusted iron. Rows of beds lined the walls, stripped bare. The nurse's station stood at the far end, glass cracked, papers scattered. Then we heard it. Clink, clink, metal dragging across tile. Slow, deliberate. Malik's flashlight swept the far end. Nothing, just shadows. The sound stopped. Water dripping, Jonah muttered. Too loud. No water here, Malik said. We all knew he was right. Lena drifted toward the nurse's station, her notebook clutched like a shield. She pulled a moldy file from the counter, coughing. Patient record, smudged name, but look. Therapy sessions, induced amnesia, reprogramming. I stepped closer. The handwriting blurred before my eyes. I blinked, tried again. For a moment, the letters rearranged themselves into something I swore I recognized. Ethan Cole, male. Admittance May 1963. My chest tightened. I blinked again. It was gone. Just smeared ink. Brainwashing, Jonah said flatly. Erasing, Lena corrected. Before I could speak, Erin let out a strangled gasp. We spun toward her. She pointed, pale and shaking. That bed. It moved. Sure enough, one of the metal frames sat at an angle now, dragged across the dust. A trail marked the floor where it had slid. Nobody had touched it. The silence was unbearable. Earth tremor, Jonah whispered. Then it came. A whisper soft as a sigh threading through the air. Go back. Chapter 3. The Asylum breathes. I felt it in my bones before I understood it. That voice wasn't carried by air. It was carried by the walls, like the asylum itself was speaking. Malik barked into the dark. Who's there? His flashlight swept the ward. Nothing. Darren was grinning like a maniac. This is it. Real-time warning from a spirit. You guys are legends. But Lena's face was pale. The story said the asylum doesn't want intruders. It doesn't scare them off. It keeps them. The word keeps clung to me like cobweb. Our lights flickered. Once, twice, Aaron's camera stuttered, lens shaking. We need to go. Now. No way, Darren said. This is the gold mine I've been chasing. A bed moved on its own? Voices on playback? This is the jackpot. Or a death trap, Malik snapped. The lights flickered again, and then a sound cut through the dark. Not a whisper, a laugh. Childlike, echoing down the corridor behind us. Every hair on my body stood on end. The laugh grew louder, closer, until it seemed to brush the back of my neck, then silence. Malik moved into the hallway, flashlight raised. Show yourself. Nothing. We followed, slow, every step echoing too loudly. Doors lined the hall, most ajar. Inside, shattered glass glinted like teeth. One room held a metal bed twisted into a grotesque shape. Another had a chair bolted to the ground, leather straps dangling, stains dark and permanent beneath it. Electroshock therapy, Lena whispered. I couldn't look at it for long. A broken mirror caught my eye. I turned, just in time to see a figure in the reflection, pale, standing right behind me. I spun. No one. My chest hammered. I didn't say a word. We climbed to the 3rd floor. The stairwell groaned under our weight. Each level looked the same, long halls, endless doors. But on the 3rd floor, we found something different. The double doors here weren't open like the rest. They were chained shut, thick rusted links looped across the handles. Above them, a sign barely clung to the wall, Ward C. The air grew colder. Lena froze. That's it, the locked ward, the one nobody came out of. My stomach dropped, because when I looked at those chain doors, my mind whispered something I shouldn't have known. You've been there before. Chapter 4. Lost Inside. The deeper we went, the more the asylum seemed to breathe. That's the only way I can describe it. The walls exhaled a damp chill, carrying the scent of rust and old blood. When we paused, it was there, faint but steady, like the building itself had a heartbeat. We tried retracing our steps, back toward the entrance. At least, that was the plan. But when we reached the ground floor again, Something was wrong. The lobby wasn't the same. The murals were gone, replaced by blank walls streaked in black mold. The filing cabinets had vanished, the floor swept clean of papers. Even the front doors were missing. The wall was just brick, as if no exit had ever existed. Jonah swore loudly. "We came the wrong way." "No," Lena said, her voice flat. "This is the same hall. Look." She pointed to a cracked ceiling tile I remembered from earlier. It was the same, and it wasn't. The asylum had shifted. Aaron was shaking. "We're trapped. It's changing itself." Darren clutched his camera tighter. His voice was too high-pitched to be confident. "It's an illusion. That's what these places do. Mess with your head." But I knew what I saw. We pressed on, searching for another way out. The corridors twisted unnaturally, looping back on themselves. Stairs led up, then down, then somehow returned us to the same hall we started from. The more we walked, the more wrong things became. Doors multiplied, rows of them stretching farther than they should. Some were locked, others opened to reveal, not rooms. One door led to another hallway, identical to the one we were in, like a mirror image. Another opened to a bricked wall. A third opened into darkness so absolute my flashlight beam was swallowed whole. Jonah's jokes dried up. Malik stopped leading the way. Erin cried silently behind her camera, her breathing ragged. I kept my mouth shut, but in my chest, dread coiled tighter and tighter. Because somewhere deep down, I had the sickening feeling that the asylum wasn't just trapping us, it was studying us. We reached the cafeteria next. Tables and chairs lay overturned, trays scattered, dishes broken into jagged edges. The smell hit me first, rotted. Food, decades old, yet still pungent, as if it had been left out yesterday. We picked our way through. The silence was so sharp it hurt. Then came the sound. Clink, 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 silverware. It came from the far end of the cafeteria, where the shadows pooled thickest. We froze. Then, clatter. A tray flung itself off a table, crashing to the ground. Aaron screamed. Jonah cursed. Malik rushed forward, sweeping his flashlight. Empty. But the trays began to rattle. One by one, they slid from tables, hitting the floor in sharp, echoing bangs. Then chairs scraped, shrieking against the tiles, as if invisible hands were dragging them out for a meal. The noise was unbearable, echoing and multiplying, until it felt like hundreds of trays, hundreds of chairs. We backed away, and then I saw them. For just a second. Figures at the tables. Thin, pale, heads bent low, eating nothing. Their movements jerky, mechanical. The moment my light swept over them, they vanished. But the sound of chewing lingered. Wet, rhythmic. I nearly vomited. Darren muttered to himself, shaking his head. Keep filming, keep filming, keep filming, and that's when the cafeteria doors slammed shut behind us. We bolted, through the kitchen, down another hall, past more doors that went nowhere. My lungs burned, my legs ached, but no matter how far we ran, the asylum's layout never changed. It was a maze with no exit, and in that maze, we weren't alone. I swear I saw shadows dart just ahead of my light. I swear I heard my name whispered again and again, each time in a different voice. The asylum wanted us lost, and it was working. Chapter 5, The Disappearings. The first to go was Jonah. It happened in the stairwell. We were arguing, again, about what to do next. Darren wanted to push higher to find Ward C. Lena wanted to stop, gather our bearings. Aaron was begging to just sit, just breathe. Malik wanted to smash a window, even though everyone we'd tried was sealed with brick on the other side. And Jonah? He wanted to keep moving. Standing still as death, he snapped. You don't stop in a place like this. You keep moving, or it swallows you. He stormed ahead, up the stairs, ignoring us. His flashlight beam cut through the dark, then gone, just like that. 1 second he was 5 steps ahead. The next, the stairwell was empty. We froze. Jonah? Malik called. His voice echoed, too loud. No reply. Darren played it cool, but his hand shook on the camera. He went around the corner. That's all. He's fine. But the stairwell had no corner, just a straight climb to the next floor. We searched, shouted, pounded on the walls, nothing. Jonah had vanished. Aaron started sobbing. Lena whispered a prayer. Malik kicked the railing until rust crumbled in flakes. And me? I thought of the file I'd seen earlier, the one with my name on it. Patient record, amnesia, reprogramming. Jonah wasn't gone. He was taken back, and we'd be next. The chaos that followed nearly broke us. We tore through the next floor, shouting Jonah's name. Every door we tried opened into empty rooms that felt wrong. Beds with straps, walls with gouges carved by fingernails. Some rooms were padded, the fabric stained dark. In one, Erin swore she saw Jonah sitting on the bed, head in his hands. She ran to him, only to find the room empty. Her screams echoed long after Malik dragged her out. Darren kept filming. I wanted to punch him, but part of me was glad, because if we didn't make it out, maybe the footage would. Maybe someone would know what happened. But the asylum wasn't finished with us. The lights flickered again, plunging us into half-darkness. Shadows writhed on the walls, too many, moving the wrong way. One of them stretched across the hall, long and thin, until it reached Erin's feet. She shrieked, kicking it off, but it clung, stretching higher, wrapping around her leg like smoke. Malik swung his flashlight, and the shadow snapped back, vanishing into the wall. Erin collapsed, sobbing. We pulled her up and kept moving, but I couldn't shake the truth gnawing at me. The asylum didn't just trap bodies, it trapped shadows, souls, memories. It wanted us whole. And Jonah was already part of it. We stopped only when we couldn't breathe anymore. The hall stretched on, endless, identical. That's when I realized something. We hadn't seen a single stairwell down since Jonah disappeared. No matter where we turned, the asylum only let us climb higher. Toward Ward C, the locked ward, the one my mind whispered I had already been in. And I knew, deep in my bones, that's where Jonah was waiting. That's where we were all headed. And none of us would leave. Chapter 6, The Horrors of Ward C. The chains on the doors weren't just rusted metal, they were a warning. I knew it the moment I touched them. Cold, brittle, almost flaking apart, yet somehow stronger than steel. They pulsed under my fingers like something alive. Ward C, the air here was different. Heavy, stagnant, it smelled of copper, mold, and something sweet that didn't belong, like rotting fruit left too long in the sun. None of us spoke for a moment. Just the sound of our breathing, ragged and uneven. Finally, Darren broke the silence. This is it, the Holy Grail, the Forbidden Wing. We get inside, we make history. His camera lens caught the flicker of my flashlight trembling in my grip. I wanted to tell him to shut up, but the words stuck because he wasn't wrong. Every story about St. Alora's ended with this place. Ward C, the locked ward, the black pit at the center of every nightmare whispered about the asylum. Malik spat on the ground. Where we make our graves. Erin shook her head violently. No, we're not going in there. Do you hear me? No. She wasn't pleading anymore. She was panicking. Her voice cracked, and her camera shook so bad the lens squealed as it tried to refocus. Lena stepped forward, staring at the chains with an almost hungry look. We have to. The asylum wants us here. The hell it does, Malik growled. Yes, she whispered. Don't you feel it? Everything's been leading us here. The halls, the doors, the stairs, all pushing us higher. It doesn't let us down. It brings us up. Her voice trembled, but her conviction didn't. Darren nodded quickly. Exactly. It's fate. Destiny. Whatever. Ward C is the heart of this place, and we're standing right in front of it. Aaron grabbed his sleeve, pulling hard. No, you don't get it. Something's waiting in there. Something worse than everything else we've seen. That's why it's locked. Her words made my skin crawl. But then Malik's flashlight beam swept over the door, and I saw something scratched into the wood beneath the peeling paint. Letters, clumsy, shaky, carved by fingernails. Do not let us out. The words slanted downward, as if whoever carved them had been dragged away mid-sentence. A chill sliced down my spine. Jesus, Malik whispered. Even Darren faltered. Could be a prank. Kids break in sometimes, right? But the silence that followed told us we all knew better. We argued for what felt like hours. Time didn't exist in the asylum anymore, not really. Malik wanted to leave the doors alone, find another way out. Aaron agreed, almost hysterical with fear. Darren and Lena wanted in, drunk on obsession. And me? I stood there, torn apart, because deep down, I already knew the truth. We weren't getting out. Not without stepping through those doors. The asylum wouldn't let us. Finally, Malik swore under his breath and raised his crowbar. Fine, but when this goes wrong, don't say I didn't tell you. The first swing sent rust flaking off the chains. The second made them groan. The third, snap. The sound was deafening. The last link broke apart like brittle bone, clattering to the ground. The doors creaked inward on their own, and something cold rushed out to meet us. Inside, Ward C was darker than the rest of the asylum. Our flashlights felt weaker here, swallowed by shadows that clung to the walls like mold. The corridor stretched long and narrow, lined with steel doors. Small square windows peered out from each one, covered in grime. Numbers were painted on the doors in faded red, not room numbers, not patient numbers, just numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4. Each one had scratches around the handle, as if someone had tried desperately to claw their way out. Erin refused to go farther. She stood just past the threshold, shaking her head over and over. Lena walked past her without hesitation, notebook clutched in her hands. Look at the architecture, the thickness of these walls. They wanted to bury these patients alive. Malik muttered, maybe we should have let them stay buried. Darren filmed everything, narrating in a shaky voice. Ward C, we've breached the infamous locked ward. Nobody's been in here for 50 years. We're the first. This is it. This is history. But I couldn't shake the feeling that somebody had been here recently. The smell was too strong, the scratches too fresh. And then we saw the first room. Lena peered through one of the windows and gasped, "Oh my God." We crowded around. Inside was a bed bolted to the floor. Leather straps dangled from the frame. But that wasn't what froze my blood. It was the walls. Every inch was covered in writing, tiny cramped words scrawled over each other until the paint was buried beneath layers of black ink. Malik wiped the grime from the window, squinting. What does it say? My light caught the words just long enough for me to read a few. Remember who you are. Don't forget again. They erase us every night. Wake up. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would crack my ribs. Darren whispered, That's insane. They were documenting their madness. But Lena shook her head. No, that's not madness. That's a warning. Her voice trembled, and I couldn't look away from the last line scrawled across the center of the wall, written darker and deeper than all the others. Ethan Cole. My name. I stumbled back, flashlight beams swinging wildly. No, I whispered. Malik frowned. What is it? Nothing, I lied. It's nothing. But the truth pressed heavy on my chest. Someone in that room had written my name, and I didn't know if it was me. We moved deeper into Ward C, though every instinct screamed at me to turn back. The corridor stretched on, lined with doors, each one more oppressive than the last. Our flashlights cut narrow tunnels of light, but the shadows seemed thicker here, heavier. They pressed in from all sides, watching. I couldn't shake the thought of that name on the wall. My name. Had I imagined it? No. I knew what I'd seen. The way the letters dug deeper into the plaster, carved as if by desperate hands. Why would it be there? How could it be there? I told myself it was a coincidence. A different Ethan, a different Cole. But the lie was thin, and my chest tightened every time I tried to swallow it. The second room was worse than the first. Erin was the one who looked this time, against her better judgment. Her scream cut through the corridor like a blade. We rushed to her side, and I saw why. The room was filled with mannequins, dozens of them, crammed against the walls, their faces blank, their bodies twisted. Some sat in chairs, some crouched in corners, others leaned against the bed in grotesque imitation of sleep. But the worst part, every mannequin wore a hospital gown. And on every chest, written in marker, was a name, Real names. Lena wiped the grime from the window, scanning them with frantic eyes. Those are patient files. These are the names I read in the archives, all the missing ones. Her breath caught. They cataloged them. One name stood out to me, bolder than the rest. Jonah W. The letters were jagged, slashed across the mannequin's chest. Malik swore violently, pounding the door with his fist. He's in there. Jonah's in there. Malik, I said hoarsely. That's not Jonah. But he didn't listen. He slammed against the door until his knuckles bled, roaring his friend's name. Inside, the mannequins seemed to shift. I blinked. No, they did shift. Their heads turned ever so slightly, all of them now facing the window. The sight was so wrong, so deeply unnatural, that bile rose in my throat. Erin collapsed against the wall, sobbing. Lena scribbled furiously in her notebook, as if writing the horror down would make it less real. Darren filmed, his breathing ragged in the audio. And Malik kept screaming Jonah's name, even as the mannequins began to press closer to the glass, blank faces smearing against it. We dragged him away before the door gave. The asylum seemed to know we were unraveling. The halls twisted again, branching in directions that made no sense. Rooms repeated themselves. Twice we opened doors that led directly back into the corridor we just left. It felt like walking through a nightmare designed by a child, nonsensical, cruel, with no rules except suffering. At one point, Erin's camera battery died, though she'd sworn it was fully charged. The red light blinked out, plunging her into silent panic. She fumbled with replacements, her hands shaking too hard to work. When Darren offered her his spare, she slapped it away. "Stop filming," she shrieked. "Stop, stop, stop." Her voice cracked, echoing off the walls. But Darren only stared at her, stunned, and whispered, "If I stop, it's like none of this matters." The look on his face terrified me more than anything we'd seen, because he wasn't filming for proof anymore. He was filming because the camera was the only thing keeping him tethered to reality. We stopped at another room. Lena insisted we look inside. Against my better judgment, I did. This one held no mannequins, no writing, no bed, just mirrors. Every wall was covered in them, tall panes that reflected our flashlights back at us. The glass was cracked and smeared, but the reflections were clear enough. Too clear, because in those reflections, we weren't ourselves. I saw me, yes, but thinner, gaunter, my skin gray, my eyes hollow, a hospital gown hanging off my shoulders instead of my jacket. My arms strapped to the bed that wasn't in the real room but was in the reflection. Erin whimpered. "Oh my God," Malik swore under his breath. Darren kept the camera trained, but his hands trembled so badly the footage was nothing but blur. And Lena stepped closer, pressed her hand to the glass. Her reflection smiled back at her, but Lena wasn't smiling. She yanked her hand away with a gasp, stumbling backward. Then the mirrors cracked, one by one, the sound splitting the corridor like gunfire. We ran. I don't know how long we fled. Minutes, hours, days. Time had no meaning anymore. The asylum swallowed it whole, just like it swallowed everything else. But eventually, we stopped, because we'd lost someone. Erin. One moment she was behind me, her hand clutching the back of my jacket like a child. The next, gone. I spun, shouting her name, my flashlight cutting through the dark. Nothing. Just endless corridor. "No," Lena whispered, her voice cracking. "Not Erin. Not Erin." Darren panned his camera wildly, screaming her name too. His voice broke, collapsing into sobs. But Malik didn't waste time. He barreled back down the hall, crowbar raised. I grabbed his arm. "Malik, don't." He shoved me off with a force that sent me sprawling. "She's still here. I'll find her." And then he vanished into the dark, his footsteps pounding, echoing, then silenced. We never saw him again. Now it was just three of us. Me, Lena, Darren. Our flashlights flickered more often. The air grew colder. The walls seemed to breathe louder. And through it all, I felt the truth pressing closer, heavier, suffocating. We weren't explorers. We weren't investigators. We were exactly where we belonged. Patience, every room, every file, every reflection screamed it at me, but I couldn't say it out loud, not yet, because Darren was clinging to his camera like a lifeline, because Lena was scribbling notes in frantic circles, because if I said it, the asylum would know I'd figured it out. And maybe then it would stop pretending. We reached the end of the corridor, one last door, bigger than the rest, heavier. The plaque above it was faded, but the letters were still legible. Observation Theater. Darren's breath hitched. This is it. This is where they kept them, watched them, experimented on them. His voice broke into a laugh that wasn't a laugh at all. This is where we get answers. Lena's hand slipped into mine, cold, trembling, and I realized she was just as scared as I was. The door creaked open on its own. Inside was darkness, and waiting in that darkness, the truth. Chapter 7. Revelations. The observation theater was worse than anything I could have imagined. The door groaned as it swung open, revealing a massive room filled with empty chairs and metal railings. The walls were lined with glass panels, each one thick and fogged, like they hadn't been cleaned in decades. Behind them, rooms we couldn't see properly, filled with shadows and strange shapes. And above us, a massive viewing balcony stretched along the perimeter, rows of seats all facing the glass, all empty, or so it seemed. The air hit me first, thick, metallic, impossible to breathe without coughing. Then came the smell, old antiseptic decay, and something sweet, cloying, like candy left to rot. Darren fumbled with his camera, muttering to himself, This is insane. Everything we've read, all the legends. I can't." He stopped abruptly. Something in the corner of the room moved. I froze. A figure stood in the shadows, thin, pale, barely more than skin stretched over bone. Its eyes, no pupils, just black voids. And it pointed at me. I stumbled back, heart hammering. Lena grabbed my arm. "It knows you." I wanted to deny it, but the truth burned in my chest. It did know me. I remembered the walls, the writings, the mirrors, all of it. The name etched into Ward C. Ethan Cole. I was never an outsider. The figure stepped forward. More shapes emerged from the shadows. They moved like marionettes, jerky, unnatural. And as they moved closer, I saw it. They weren't just figures, they were versions of us. Or maybe what we would become. I wanted to scream. Darren was the first to break. He raised his camera like a shield. "You can't, don't touch us." The reflection, or whatever they were, smiled. But it wasn't Darren's smile. It was twisted, wide, impossible. He dropped the camera. It smashed against the floor, the lens cracking with a shriek of glass. Lena screamed and I pulled her behind me. "We need to get out. Now!" But the doors slammed shut behind us, every exit blocked. The observation theater wasn't just a room. It was a trap, a cage, and the shadows, our shadows, were coming alive. The first one reached Darren. It grabbed him, pulling him back into the darkness. His scream was brief, swallowed by the thick air, then silence. I couldn't move. My legs wouldn't obey. Then Lena. I grabbed her hand, yanking, trying to pull her toward the doors, but she was heavier, harder to move. And then she looked at me, eyes wide, terrified, and whispered, "They knew we'd come. They've been waiting for us." I didn't understand. Not yet. The shadows pressed closer, but one thing kept me rooted. I could see them, and I could see me. I remembered the files, the mirrors, the writings on the walls. The asylum didn't just imprison bodies. It preserved them, recreated them. The patients never left because the asylum copied them, stored them, and rewrote their memories. Every room, every mirror, every shadow was a reflection of someone else's torment. I was already part of it. The asylum had known me long before I arrived. I stumbled backward into the center of the room. My hands hit a desk covered in files, patient files, names, admission dates, all familiar. And there in the center, a thick leather-bound journal. I opened it. It was my handwriting, but I hadn't written it. It chronicled every step I had taken from the moment I'd arrived, every thought, every fear, every heartbeat. Even my doubts about Darren, Lena, Malik, and Aaron. And then the last entry. Ethan Cole will come. He will step into Ward C. He will remember nothing. He will belong here. He has always belonged here. I fell to my knees. Everything clicked. The memories, the déjà vu, the whispers in the halls. I had been here before. Every step, every scream, every vanish. It wasn't new. It was a cycle. The asylum didn't just trap people. It erased them, copied them, and waited for them to return like a predator luring prey back into the cage. The shadows were upon us. I saw Lena vanish first. She screamed, flailing, and then she was gone, just like Aaron, just like Malik, just like Jonah. Darren reached for me, eyes wild. "Ethan, no, don't!" I grabbed his arm, and in that instant I understood. There was no escape. The asylum didn't release its patients. It didn't let anyone leave. And the most horrifying part, it wasn't finished with me. The shadows engulfed Darren. I watched his face twist into the same hollow-eyed version I had seen in the mirrors. Then he vanished entirely. And finally, silence. I was alone. I sank to the floor, clutching the journal, every heartbeat echoing like gunfire. I could hear whispers everywhere. My own voice screaming my name from every wall, every shadow, every reflection. And then I saw it. My own reflection. Not in a mirror, not in glass. On the floor, etched into the dust. My name, my face, my life. Ethan Cole. I realized, with a clarity so cold it burned, I had never arrived. I had always been here. This wasn't my first exploration. It was my last. The asylum had been waiting for me for decades, watching, shaping, remembering, and now it had me. The doors of observation theater slammed shut behind me. I screamed, but no one heard, not anymore. Somewhere in the dark, the asylum laughed. Chapter 8, it's do or die. The shadows receded the instant I stopped moving. I don't know why, but for a second, it was just me, alone in the observation theater. The journal was still clutched in my hands, pages trembling, edges frayed. Every word screamed my life back at me. Every entry confirmed the truth I had feared. The asylum had been waiting, watching, preparing. I had to move. I didn't care where. I didn't care what I ran into. The first obstacle was the doors. I pushed at the heavy metal doors, but they wouldn't budge. The chains were gone, but some invisible weight held them closed. I slammed my shoulder against them over and over. Something shrieked, high-pitched, inhuman, echoing from every corridor. The air thickened, pressing against my lungs. My heartbeat was thunder in my chest. And then, movement, the shadows. Not chasing, not waiting, just flickering along the walls like whispers. They didn't touch me, but I could feel them breathing down my neck. I bolted. I stumbled through the halls, corridors twisting as though the asylum itself had become liquid, reshaping every time I blinked. A staircase appeared before me. The wood groaned under my weight, each step threatening to collapse. I ran faster, ignoring the splinters biting my palms. The shadows followed, but they didn't pursue this time. They stretched behind me like smoke, trying to pull me back. I could hear the whispers, voices I recognized. Jonah, Aaron, Malik, Darren. Every scream, every plea, every word I had ever heard in these halls. I refused to stop. I reached the main lobby. The front doors were gone, just brick wall. Panic clawed at me. I was trapped. Then I remembered. The emergency exit. We'd passed it earlier, near the storage room, a small door with a rusted handle. I ran toward it, praying it was still there. It was. I yanked at the handle. It resisted, but I forced it open. Outside, darkness, cold night air, the sky black but familiar. I didn't stop to look. I ran into the night. The asylum's presence didn't let go immediately. I could feel it in the air, reaching, clawing. The whispers followed me into the parking lot. The walls groaned behind me. The ground shook with every step. But somehow, I made it. I didn't stop until the asylum was just a silhouette against the stars. My lungs burned, my legs ached, and my mind screamed. I didn't look back. I made it to the road. A car passed, headlights cutting through the dark. I waved frantically. The driver slowed. I jumped in without asking, panting, shaking, tears streaking my dirt-smudged face. "Where to?" the driver asked. "Anywhere. Just anywhere away from there," I whispered. I didn't speak for the rest of the ride. The silence between us was heavy but safe. The next day, I contacted the authorities. The police returned with me to the asylum, but it was different. The gates had collapsed, the main doors open. Inside it was empty. Not a trace of Ward C, the mannequins, the observation theater, nothing. Just peeling paint, broken furniture, and a silence that screamed louder than any shadow. They didn't believe me. How could they? I never went back. I tried to resume my life, tried to forget. But some nights, when the air is still, I hear it. The whispers, the faint scratching of fingernails on walls, and sometimes my name. And then I see the shadow flickering in the corner of my eye, not fully formed, not yet, waiting, patient. Because the asylum never really lets go. I survived, barely. But I am marked, and I know someday it will call me back.